Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 145 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host today, Andy Whiteside. Today is October 2nd, 2023. I'm not going to make comments about how fast the year is going, but it is going way too fast. And that's coming from a guy who turns 50 in a couple weeks. So here we go.
Woo, happy pre-birthday.
I don't look a day over 49. And that's happening fast too. Bill Sutton is in his 30s, so he can't relate. Bill, how's it going?
Yeah, I have a birthday this month too, but we won't talk about it.
Yeah. It's just a number.
That's right.
But it doesn't feel like just a number.
Well, it's just another day in a way, but
how
you feel.
I lose sleep at night sometimes worrying about Bill retiring and moving on, and then I realize how young his kids are, and then I stop worrying about it.
That's what you need to be thinking about. Yep.
As it turns out, puppies aren't free.
No, they're not. That was the voice of Geremy Meyers talking about puppies. Geremy, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. By the way, I was at Costco last weekend, and they have already pulled out all of the Christmas, so it's on its way. Winter is coming.
It's been a couple weeks at Lowe's. I swear, 2 weeks ago I was in there and they had Christmas out.
I think when Dunkin' Donuts starts introducing pumpkin spice in August, I think that's a sign of the apocalypse.
Well, it's coming. Or was it this year?
This year.
It was this year. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that because they really do want to get the ball rolling, or is that because they want to make sure they sell out on all the stuff they have before the holiday and they get stuck with it?
It's pretty much what it is. And I think there's a certain group of people that really love the taste of pumpkin spice, but when you sprinkle it on a donut, sprinkle it in a coffee, sprinkle it on pizza, you start running into problems.
Yeah. Todd, I want to say this first. So I was at a football game yesterday, Carolina Panther game. I'm
sorry.
Sorry to hear about that.
It was a good game. It's competitive, but I was tailgating beside a guy who played football at a Division I school that left one conference for another conference about 10 years ago. That's what it was. And he said they had a team meeting. It was his second year on the team when they announced they were moving, or maybe his first year they announced, and the second year they actually moved. And they had this presentation to the team about why they were moving, and they were trying to justify it. And finally, one of the players raised his hand and said, "This is just about making more money, right?" And the marketing guy within the athletic department tried to play it off. And finally, the athletic director said, "Yes, it's about money. We're going to make this much more money." Everybody good with that? Everybody said yes, and they moved on.
Yep. Let's just admit it and move on. Is really what it is.
Yeah. And imagine if the transfer portal was available back then.
Oh.
Or NILs were available back then. Yeah.
Oh. So I went to a college football game Friday night, and North Carolina State, Louisville. Again, sorry. It is what it is. And they, in the middle of the game, and most people missed it. I kind of surveyed people in this. The coach did a commercial for funding NIL, like in the middle of the game. And I thought that was tasteless, at the same time, very appropriate in today's world. They asked the fan base who just paid $100 a piece for a ticket to give more money so they could pay for more players in the middle of the game.
Yep.
That's what you got to do.
And that's what it's coming down to. Especially schools that are funded by a state, through the states, where they're limited as to what they can do from a budgeting perspective. And then you turn around and say, well, hey, we need to pay our players more.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but you know what? They're competing though, right? And back in the day, they would go ask donors for money, and now they're just asking, everyone for money, really. So it's just an extension of what they've been doing for a long time. It's just
sort of. You're paying your money to go to the game. You're paying your money to go to school. You're paying your money for the booster club, and now you pay money for the player itself. And look, I'm not against paying the players. It is a business. At the same time, it just I'm going to run out of money. I can't pay but so many people.
But you know why they do it, Andy? For the reason that Dunkin' Donuts just introduced pumpkin spice in August. It's because they can.
Sure.
So there's a market for it. Folks want the best team, and they realize folks will pay for it. So
we'll pay for it. Yep, as long as we can. And if we can't, we'll go in debt to pay for it.
Yep.
How crazy
and that is That's the American dream.
So we're
There you
lucky enough to have Todd Smith with us. Todd spends most of his time working in Canada these days, which I think they're having a holiday today. And but he works in the US. So my joke to Todd was, do you get both sets of holidays off? Or maybe better yet, you get neither off because you got to work the side that's working when it happens.
I just work all the time. It's easier to just deal with it that way.
Yeah.
Take time off when I can.
So I was at the game yesterday, and there was some financial advisors, and they asked me, "Okay, when are you selling? When are you getting out of the business?" I'm like, "I'm not." And he's like, "Why not?" Because I love doing it. Yeah. I mean, I literally look. I can't. I won't hold up too long, but piece of mail. I get 2 or 3 days a day that ask, "Can I buy your company?" I'm like, "No, it's not for sale. Leave me alone." They even put, I want to. These days, this one says acquisition opportunity. A lot of them say, "Can we talk to you about buying your?" All kind of. It's like it's insane. It's nonstop.
By the way, Not for Sale is a great book. It's written by a gentleman named Kevin Hancock. It talks about the Native American tribes in the northern plain states.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're tied to the land, but they don't own the land. And that whole belief structure.
Wow.
But once again, Not for Sale by Kevin Hancock.
I will add that. I'm currently listening to the Behind the Cloud, the Mark Benioff book about starting Salesforce.
Yep.
Have you guys listened to that?
Mm-mm.
Excerpts of it, yeah.
He goes from play to play to play, and man, it's like he's talking to me. It's like all the same things. Build community, go after. If you're not the top, go, target the top. Like, make it clear that that's who you want to be. So many things that align with XenTegra, and that build a community thing is a massive part of it. And Salesforce has a massive, strong community of people who love being part of it. All right. Well, today, let me share my screen. We have a blog from the guys at Cloud Software Group, aka Citrix. And the title of it is from Julie Guest. So thank you, Julie, for writing the blog. 5 new ways Citrix and Google are simplifying your cloud transition. Now, to be fair, this is from April 22nd of 2022. But this is happening and happened, maybe not as much as we want, but happening. And it's gotten better. So maybe Todd and Geremy can elaborate beyond what we're talking about here. So Todd, from your perspective, why is it important that we talk about Citrix and Google together?
So primarily it's because it's not, the industry is no longer tied to one specific vendor, especially on the cloud vendors, right? So it's not about just doing things with Azure. It's about recognizing that there are big players in this space, and Google being one of them, right? And there's some advantages towards being able to enable and utilize the services that come with Google Cloud. Number one is there's some cost benefits, and number two is it's really, most of the kids nowadays that are going through school and going through colleges and universities, they're being exposed to Google services and Google Cloud, which means that those services and those, when they migrate to become employees, they're going to have familiarity with it, right? So it's going to be, it's yet another ecosystem that they've grown up in, similar to, the Mac generation that grew up in education, back in some of our times.
Yeah, it's going to be a diversity of use cases and solutions, and Google is obviously going to be a player in that. And Citrix making the Google world work around digital workspace beyond just Google apps. It's a no-brainer for the two to partner. Geremy, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that hadn't even occurred to me, Todd. I remember the Apple generation, right? And when they graduated, they wanted to use Macs at work. And listen, I've got 4 kids at home, and guess what? All 4 of them have Chromebooks right now because that's what they're using in schools. And it's really weird. We transitioned to, the Google Workplace, here at Cloud Software Group. And so just getting my hands back into that and seeing that from an enterprise perspective, as opposed to, just how I've used this from a consumer perspective for so long. You can see the plan that Google's got. So it's, again, 10 years ago, when I first started working for Citrix, it was very much all about hypervisors. And I feel like the cloud's the new hypervisor, right? And so just us being hybrid, across the board.
And Geremy, when you say cloud, you mean PaaS, IaaS, SaaS, all the above enable things that don't need Windows, don't need x86 local execution, things that don't need Office, taking it back to what Todd said. And what hits me the most when I hear that, I don't know if you guys, I listen to a ton of podcasts. I hear this reoccurring conversation around Google for gaming, Chromebooks for gaming. And I'm like, that can't work. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. In the world of deliver, not deploy, yeah, that works.
It's interesting. So for the longest time, I've been a little bit of a Linux nerd. And so the challenge for the longest time has been, how do I get these Windows apps to run on my Linux machine? And there were various ways to do it. You could virtualize it. There was code weavers and wine and all sorts of fun things. And now it doesn't matter, outside of the fact that I'm delivering a lot of that, so just so you guys know, I carry around an Ubuntu laptop quite often because I just like it. And as it turns out, most of the time I'm in web apps because it doesn't matter, for the same reason we've got Chromebooks here.
Yeah.
And for all the other stuff, launch virtual apps still, and it works great. But I'm so used to using that ecosystem. You're right, it doesn't matter anymore. And so that's the way most apps are delivered to Chromebooks.
And Geremy, you're weird, right? You're using a real version of Linux. In this case, we would just use Google, which is Linux under the cover, but it's been made so user-friendly, you don't even have to know it.
In fact, most folks don't know that, right? They don't know that, Linux is or some version that Google has deployed. That's what's running, on a Chromebook.
All right, Bill, your 2 cents on where Google fits into Citrix and Citrix sauce for Google.
Well, I think obviously as another hyperscaler or cloud, you guys have covered all the workstation, the endpoint pieces of it, and the Google workspaces. But we've got Azure, we got AWS, and Google Cloud has kind of been the one that you don't hear that much about. But they've definitely been pouring a lot of development and innovation into the cloud. And there's lots of cool features that they have that others don't, that we're going to talk about today. So I see a lot of future for this, and I'm glad to see Citrix working with them more closely.
How about this one? How about the idea that you may be a Microsoft shop, but you have to decide somewhere along the way, are you all in, or do you keep a little bit of a toe or foot or leg in the other players just to make sure?
Absolutely. Yep. Spread the risk around.
Yep. All right. We're going to hit through some of that on the way through. So let's talk about number one. Todd, I'll come to you first. Simple procurement of Citrix DaaS, desktop as a service, via the Google Cloud Marketplace.
Yeah, so I think this is something that's really coming along with all of the cloud providers, but Google seems to make it a little bit easier to do, and that is by putting the Citrix DaaS service as available via the Google Marketplace, the Google Cloud Marketplace, right? That means I don't have to go through a traditional, and I won't say traditional, more of a legacy software purchasing process, where I have to go through download software or receive media for us old school guys, and then go through the installation process. The benefit of going through a marketplace is how quickly you can turn things on and turn things off and manage it through the marketplace, which is critical. It's shifting the way consumers, whether they be individual consumers or whether they do large commercial entities, are going through the purchase process. We've seen this major shift in the way people are buying things. We talk about this an awful lot, and Geremy can back me up on this, is that by the time customers are reaching out to the manufacturers like Citrix, they've already done a lot of research. They've done research on the web. They've done research by talking with other customers and their peers. They may be an existing customer. But that whole shift in the purchasing paradigm has really driven folks to, hey, they've done all this research. They want to be able to click that link from their research and go and buy almost immediately.
Right. And so, Todd, Geremy, if I do that, if I click, what does that do? Like, technically, what does that do for me?
So if you go through the marketplace, and again, if you've not been to any of the hyperscaler marketplaces, it's like a catalog, right? So you log in, you go search something up, you type Citrix, you're going to see, hey, what can I deploy from a Google catalog? So again, I'm in the Google Cloud Platform, site. What can I deploy from here? If I pick Google DaaS Premium for Google Cloud, guess what? Citrix Premium for Google Cloud, it'll deploy in your DaaS tenant. Your Google tenant. So you've got a control plane that is provisioned. Citrix hosts that piece, but tied directly to your GCP tenant here. So listen, it just makes it easy to stand up and deploy. And the most important thing of all, and this is kind of where the blog hits on this last paragraph here, is, a lot of customers are looking to make their cloud spend as cheap as possible. And how do they do that? They go to the hyperscalers, they go to Google, and they commit to spending so much, right? And Google says, well, hey, if you spend that much, guess what? We'll reduce the rate it costs for these cloud services by X amount, right? The catch is it's a commitment, right? So you're committing to using it. So anytime you buy anything off the marketplace, it buys down what that commitment is. So what you'll find is when customers commit to any of these hyperscalers, they're going to look to go to the marketplace to buy anything to help buy down that commit, which is really important.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, thoughts on the Google Cloud Marketplace being a strategic play?
Say that again. Sorry.
Thoughts on the Google Cloud concept? Like I struggle with it because we don't have it. However, I understand that simplicity on deployment and buying stuff is our future, just like it is at home when I order stuff off Amazon.com.
I mean,
well,
Bill, that's really what it boils down to right there, Andy, is it's taking the consumer experience and bringing it to the enterprise, and to make it very similar and very comfortable and familiar to the purchasing folks and the IT folks and others.
Yeah.
I mean, well, listen, to an IT business owner, Andy, I mean, it's marketing, isn't it? Like if you see your name in the marketplace, there's some legitimacy to that, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 2 on the list, new Citrix DaaS solutions purpose-built just for Google. Geremy, you want to take this?
So we kind of hit on this a second ago, but we have a specific SKU, a specific offering that is Citrix DaaS standard. So there's an edition of DaaS specifically for Google Cloud. This is the one that's available in the marketplace. This is the one that's basically click through to deploy. And it comes with there's an option for a premium edition actually with the Google Cloud version. But again, you go to the marketplace, you find it, you deploy it, and it stands it up for you, but it's built inside of Google Cloud. So, behind the covers, we've got historically Citrix Cloud, the DaaS service has been built in Azure. Guess what? We've got a version that cloud tenant runs in Google, completely in Google's infrastructure, as opposed to the Azure piece. So it's a big deal, right? So that not only means that we have a solution built for Google, it means we've got a big partnership with Google as well, because we're willing to do that.
Right.
And if I'm being honest, we've got customers who are looking for, they want to move away from Microsoft, and this is just another step in the process.
And real quick on that note, I'm not advocating moving away from Microsoft, but I am advocating keeping your options open. And if you got a little bit of maybe a desktop group over in Google or AWS or both even, then you've got a way out. And when the time comes to reevaluate, your spend every year, maybe the pricing changes from one of the providers. Now you got one of the other guys to use as a way to, give yourself options. Todd, thoughts on the idea that purpose-built stuff from Citrix and any examples you might have of people using it?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is being able to customize and leverage some of the features that are individual to that hyperscaler. In this case, with some of the Google Cloud resources, right? So we're not having to port someone else's solution into Google Cloud, right? We're adding in specific hooks and features that can be leveraged with DaaS. And the benefit here is that you're almost using a customized solution without having to pay the price for the customizations.
Right. Yeah, that's oh man. So for example, taking number 1, number 2, I bought myself a new suit the other day. I bought my 21-year-old son a new suit. In the old days where you went into a tailor and went through all that madness, we just went out to Bonobos. You guys all familiar with Bonobos?
Mm-hmm.
So I went out to Bonobos and I know what size we are and know what build we are. We just ordered right off of there, and it's going to come in and it's going to be almost perfect. If it's not perfect, we'll go get it tailored a little bit. But we were done in 30 minutes and moved on and watched football the rest of the night.
That's also the benefit of having a son that's almost the same size and body shape as you.
He's close. He's close. All right, number 3, new
that's
migration.
an advantage you guys should all take advantage of, by the way.
Yeah.
I can't.
Your son's not the same size as you?
No, he's slightly smaller.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not gonna take that one on. All right, number 3, new migration tools. Todd, what does this mean?
So I think the biggest thing is I think this is one of the challenges that a lot of customers have is, okay, well, how do I go about moving from one, whether it be on-prem or another hyperscaler? How do I do that migration seamlessly? So there's a lot of new tools that are supported in the Google Cloud, and some of these tools we've had around for a long period of time, including the image portability service, two of our services that have been around for a long period of time, including machine creation services as well as provisioning services. So if you're using those on-prem, those same services can move to the cloud with you, so it can move to the Google Cloud. And that helps with that familiarity. It helps with eliminating that fear of, I'm going to have to learn a whole set of new tools to be able to do my job. And it reduces that risk.
So Todd, I understand PVS. That's been our secret weapon for all these years in making images portal from literally like one customer to another, assuming domain stayed the same, or I've seen that happen. MCS works as part of the portability piece.
So that's something that's being worked on. But the big thing is, the first big step is getting PBS in there, and it's available right now. It's available right now, but a lot of our customers that do it at scale are using provisioning services.
Yeah. Well, that's like that's a portability dream, PVS. And I like to think that our old challenge of having to deal with the networking team in the PVS world kind of goes away, because in the cloud, maybe we can provision those PVS dedicated networks ourselves. Yep. And maybe we go right around some of that old networking baggage we used to have to deal with.
Well, and part of that's because the network has been virtualized just like the machines have been virtualized in this case, and you have control over those within your tenant. The client managed networking that occurs within GCP, you have much more control over that than most organizations have in their physical networks.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
and I think a big reason for that is when organizations are going to the cloud. I mean, they did this to some extent on-prem, but when they go to cloud infrastructure specifically, they start to look at infrastructure as code. So when they're rolling out resource locations, when they're rolling out, bits of functionality, they want this repeatable. They want it documented. They want to be able to, roll it out very predictably. And so that's all code, right? They've got a JSON file that defines what this looks like, and they just push it out, right? So when you look at something like this, if you can standardize, because Andy, what you're alluding to, and I think we've got several mutual customers where we've seen this, for on-prem physical cabled environments, is it's really hard to standardize as best you want, because you're never 100% sure it's standard, right? Yep. In the cloud, you can do a better job of that, right? So what it's supposed to look like. Every time you deploy, it looks the exact same way, and you've standardized on what that network looks like, because that has always been the Achilles heel. You got a team relying on a networking team for like the road, and when that goes sideways, you got potholes and you can't prove it. That's always been the challenge with PBS.
Yeah, I worked in a physical environment one time where the entire Citrix environment was down for a week because they changed DHCP servers over the weekend. We were using provisioning services, and we could not get them to admit they made a big change that impacted us. And finally, we found the DHCP reservation and release was happening. The release was happening prior to shutdown, and it was screening the machines. It basically ripping the hard drive out 80% through the shutdown.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Bill, any comments on the tools section here?
No, I obviously giving the customers the ability to take their on-prem environment and get it up to Google Cloud in a relatively simple manner versus having to completely rebuild is huge. And I honestly didn't know PDS was available in Google Cloud, and that's a great thing. Obviously, I mean, I've had challenges with the networking side on PDS years ago, and getting this into a hyperscaler and being able to leverage it as well as move the images around is really solid technology.
Yeah.
So
I know that this blog says available in preview, but it is officially GA now. Yeah. So this is roughly a year old. Yeah.
Figured as much.
All right, let's talk money. Significant savings on cloud expenses. I guess, Geremy, it's your turn to go first. We've alluded to this a couple times. Why does Google and Citrix together versus Citrix and someone else together make this happen?
Again, this one's a little dated because this feature's been out, and it's actually available across cloud and on-prem, as some of our other blogs have alluded to. But it's auto scaling. Just being able to manage from the hypervisor. I mean, not from the hypervisor, but from the cloud management plane. Just the spinning up and resume. The suspend, just to power manage the VMs. I think what's unique with Google in particular is just how they bill anyways, right? So I think a lot of the other hypervisors bill, I can't remember if it's at a per hour or a per, I can't remember what the block is, but Google does it at like a per second billing perspective. So you're chipping away at that bill, and it's really kind of hard to understand until you see that first bill. But you have the ability to spin up and shut down, and the fact that Google Cloud actually charges you as a customer in a smaller increment, you can actually realize more cost savings than you anticipated. Yeah.
And sorry, I got distracted for a quick second there. The cost savings around Google and auto scale, but Google wanting this business, wanting these workloads as a conduit to other things they want to do with their cloud. That's got to be a play there too. When you say, Todd,
definitely a play. Because once again, it's more that they can deliver to their customers via consuming our product. The more sticky they're going to be, right? And in this cloud commit concept of if I can get a customer to say they're going to spend X number of thousands of dollars per year, and this is another way to reduce that cost or to chip away at it, and still be able to answer the questions that almost every CFO and finance director is asking about, are we getting what we're paying for? And most cloud providers, it's the equivalent of, you jump in a taxi and you said, hey, I need to pull over and pick something up at a store. That meter is still running, whether you're in the car in motion or not. What if you could hit pause when you're out of the car, when you're out of the taxi, while you're going and doing something else? That's a huge benefit without having to go and get another taxi after you've been dropped off, right? So there's a whole bunch of benefits in the cost perspective that really helps drive the use of these cloud services.
Yeah. All right, I just did a quick Google just to confirm, but it looks like Azure bills on an hourly rate.
Yep.
And I think the secret sauce here with Google, and honestly, what sets them apart is going to be just they bill per second, which is pretty wild when you think about it.
The other thing, the key thing here, at suspend and resume is something only Google Cloud does today, or at least did a year ago, or whenever this blog was released. And suspend resume, it's like, kind of like what you were talking about with the taxi, but with suspend resume, it's like closing a lid on your laptop and it goes into a suspend state. You open it back up, it pops right back. It kind of goes to sleep. So in addition to the significant cost savings that can be achieved, it's also a lot quicker to resume the machine. If a user, disconnects and after a certain amount of time, it goes into a suspend state, or they suspend it. And then when they go to resume, it's a lot quicker. It comes up a lot quicker than a lot of the other hyperscalers do today. So you get kind of the benefits on both sides.
Can you imagine going back to the days where your laptop didn't go to sleep when you shut the lid and save the battery?
You knew, and you knew when that happened too, because you pulled it out of your bag and it was hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Andy, at the bottom of this blog, they've actually got a calculation of what that looks like. So if you keep scrolling, you can see kind of what they looked at, the instance type. So just to throw that context. Yeah.
It's significant money when you add it up.
Yep.
66%. Customers save 66%. All right. Let's see. Number 5 here is probably a moot point, but I'll let Todd tell me. Google Cloud provisioning for hybrid rights. Is that solved with the universal license or not?
It has been solved with universal licensing.
Okay. Now there are some people that don't have universal, or they're not forced to universal, so it still applies.
It still applies, but what we're seeing is a lot more customers. They're moving towards the universal licensing because they don't have to worry about the hybrid rights versus non-hybrid rights, and the transferring the licenses back and forth between those different models. Yeah. This is something that we kind of solve on the licensing side, but for when this blog was probably official or initially written, that was definitely an advantage, right? So being able to have Google support those hybrid rights was absolutely critical.
Is this because Google truly cares about providing solutions that make sense to us, or is this because they really want to find their way into the Windows x86, including desktops world, because that's where enterprise lives? Or both?
I think honestly, it's a combination, and it's probably both of those are reasons why they're doing this. If you look at the Google mantra that's out there, right? The company was founded on the do good mentality, and that means meeting the customers where they need to be, right? And we've taken on, Cloud Software Group has actually taken on that mantra as well of, we're going to meet the customers where they are. And that means if they're in the cloud, if they're on-prem, if they're a combination, that's where we're going to be able to provide a service, just like, kind of Google is with this.
Right. Geremy, do you have a working example of a customer who's taken advantage of Google Cloud for their Citrix environment, and what was their primary reason for their doing it?
So we have several. The one I'm thinking of in particular, we have a large customer in the Midwest who this is exactly what they did. Some of it is they have a strategic alliance, a strategic partnership with Microsoft. I mean, not Microsoft, but with Google. And so they want to deploy on Google Cloud. Some of it was certainly cost savings. But they have just a corporate alignment with Google. And, I think it was very attractive that, number one, we had, a solution that was specifically tailored to Google. I think from a cost perspective, they were considering things like auto scale and just the billing model itself. But we have large deployments on Google Cloud. It's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, any firsthand customers from your perspective that's deployed on Google Cloud?
We've got a couple that have done it, but it's all predates this article, so they're obviously didn't get the benefits of this at the time, but certainly are experiencing it now.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too, right? The way Citrix DAS and Google Cloud and even Google Chrome OS. So real quick, for me, there's three areas of Google: is Google Chrome OS, Google Workspaces, and Google Cloud, GCP. Those three things come together plus Citrix, and you've got a really, really strong powerhouse solution set to run a business off of, especially newer businesses that don't have, dare I call it, the legacy office challenges.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, the ones you're thinking of, prior to this, why did they choose Google Cloud?
One of them was they had a presence already and they were very heavily Google shop, and the other one was literally just cost. It was cheaper than what they were on before, which was AWS.
Yeah. Well, that matters. Both of those things matter. If you put two of them together, that's perfect.
Hey, Bill, real quick, on that customer, were they using infrastructure as a service from Google, or were they using some of the other services primarily?
Primarily IaaS infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting to me because I think historically most Google customers are leveraging all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And the IaaS piece is something that's really,
Yeah, these guys were doing Google Workspace as well. But so that was a natural fit for them, but they weren't doing anything else and chose to just go IaaS 100% for the Citrix workloads.
Oh.
Okay.
And it was a rebuild. I mean, there was no migration service or anything at that time.
Yeah. And Google has GCP, right? They have plenty of locations now where spreading your data centers out and being geographically redundant is a no-brainer. They have for a while. Obviously, they have for a while. But the fact that they're in the DAS, the x86 Windows DAS world because of Citrix makes it very viable for an enterprise class solution. All right, gentlemen, that's the end of this blog. I appreciate you helping me cover it. And I look forward to doing this every Monday. I got my Mondays run me over like a steamroller, but getting the chance to have these kind of conversations, make it all worth it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thanks. We'll do it again next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.